questions ready. Your questions are not gonna be monitored. So whatever you need to think about, you need to ask it, and they can turn you down on answering it. But it's their choice whether they answer or not. Thank you guys for showing up.
How many questions did each person ask?
As many as we can take in between now and 8 o'clock.
Gotcha.
Mr. Josh, you're the first man up.
Be quiet.
Good evening. My name is Josh A. White Sr. I'm one of the candidates that's running for sheriff for the county of Southampton in the city of Franklin. After Sheriff Stutz and Major Drury decided to retire, and after talking to my wife, Lorraine Turner White, of 32 years of marriage, we decided that I should run for this office. Having worked my way through the ranks, I experienced much of the agency's responsibility, whether the jail, civil process, or the courtroom security. I am now the acting captain there in charge of the patrol division. I'm a member of the command staff and have been a member of the command staff for the last 7 years. I've been involved with the budget, personnel matters, inmate disputes, and the day-to-day aspects of running the agency. I came to the sheriff's office in 1984, November the 1st to be exact, after serving 4 years active duty in the United States Marine Corps. I have been with the sheriff's office for 34 years. I've been a part of the community all of my life. I have dedicated my life to the community of Southampton County and the city of Franklin. I enjoy working with the citizens of Southampton County and the city of Franklin. There's not much that I haven't gone to, because I try to be a part of any and everything that is going on. Whether it's the Bronco Club, or the high school graduations, or just any picnic or any outing that is going on. For the last 30 years, I have been a part of it. Some might ask the question, okay, why just you have been a part of it? It's not just been me, we have other members of the agency as well. But a lot of times when we had to go to these functions, when I didn't have enough, I stepped up and I have gone. Some may have thought it was about the money. Trust and believe is the same money that the first man get, whether he just started yesterday, it's the same money that I got. So it wasn't about the money. There was no overtime. It was a flat rate, and this is what everybody was paid, no matter if you were the top versus the bottom. You were paid that same money. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed being with the sheriff's office for the past 34 years. I've been asked the question, okay, if you make sheriff, what kind of changes you looking to make? I'm from the old school where it says, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. If it's working well, we keep it working well. We tweak it as we go along if we see there's a problem. Two things that I do want to look at, and that is community involvement. Number one, I often ask the question, I've asked this question for quite some time. Why do we only go to people's houses when we have a call to serve? Why can't we go by someone's house if they're out in the yard cutting the grass? We introduce ourselves to them, they introduce themselves to us, and we start this community bond, community relationship. The second thing I want to look at is the kids. The kids, for some reason or another, are being taught that we're the bad guy. That's a stigma that we as police officers have over our head. And I feel that we need to change that. The only way that I know we can change that is we've got to go back to the school and catch them when they're down and in the grade school. down there and start to bond with these children. Take the police car over there, partner up with the fire department, put a fire truck over there, let them touch your feet. What's the worst they can do to a police car or fire truck? Blow the siren or blow the horn. That's the worst. Okay? So those are some things that I'm looking at, some things that I want to do if elected next sheriff for Southampton County in the city of Franklin. And yes, I have been in the city of Franklin for quite some years. When I first came to work at the sheriff's office, I always said my work was done here in the city of Franklin, service of papers, the court system itself. So I mean, there's not a much that I didn't know like I knew the back of my hand. So with all that in mind, I'm asking that you, on November 5th, vote Josh A. White Sr. for sheriff. Thank you.
Next will be John Brown.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. See, I'd like to thank you for putting this on, because I think this is a great deal. It's really good to see all the involvement that the community wanting to get out and see, you know, either their candidate, support their candidate, or hear from the other candidate to see if they got anything extra they can offer. I think it's a great thing. You know, there again, I don't mind talking to people. I don't mind getting up and standing in front of people and telling them something. I'm all about the truth. I am not a politician, I can tell you that. I'm gonna tell you straightforward like it is. If there's a problem, we're gonna address it. But I wanna talk about the experience, because I think that means a lot. You know, when you're looking at different things, you know, I started in law enforcement, and I got some brown cards back there with my name on it. Please get that. You can look at it. So, I started in law enforcement in 1986. I started as a correctional officer in prison. That definitely went for me kind of funny. I'm back at a prison now working. I went to Odom, found out that I definitely, you know, wasn't cut out for corrections work. I wanted to be out. I wanted to be in law enforcement work. I had 3 uncles that were in law enforcement work. One was a Virginia State Trooper. Being from North Carolina, but just across the river, not far. A lot of people consider me a come here, but I've been here long enough now. I feel like I'm from here. Raised my family here. My daughter, my wife's here. She's an educator here. Teaches at county school. Been teaching here for 25 years, I think. 27. See how it goes in my house. I stand corrected for 27. I'm working, you know, basically a 33-year career in law enforcement. I left Weldon at the rank of sergeant. I went to work with the Northampton County Sheriff's Office as a deputy sheriff. Went to the rank of detective there, and I applied for the highway patrol and the Virginia State Police. And I really liked the Virginia State Police. One, my uncle taught me into it, but it was because it was so much different stuff that they had you could move throughout. So you could go from, you know, writing speeding tickets to flying helicopters to working with dogs to doing drugs to, you know, being on this SWAT team, which that's where I actually ended up at. I was on the SWAT team for about 14 years. So I went with the state police. I've been promoted twice throughout the career with the state police. I worked 28 years there with the state police. I had 6 years prior to that coming to the state police. My last assignment was in Peoria, so I've worked everywhere but the Eastern Shore in 5th Division. 5th Division encompasses everything from Brunswick County all the way to the Maryland line on the Eastern Shore. I'm currently the Special Investigations Supervisor over at the federal prison over in Winton, North Carolina. We're going through some times over there. And my experience there has been really a little bit different than police work, but it's like police work. So there, my experience is I'm pretty much like the police chief of that institution. we have about 300 employees, and we have, today's count was 1,482 inmates. So we got a big population, and I'm like the police chief over there. And I have these people that work under me, or I work with, I don't like to say under me, I don't like my actual thing, I like being called the manager and not the supervisor. But we work as a big team over there. We're getting a lot of things cleaned up over there. Not only with, drugs, cell phones and things like that. Cell phones and drones are a big thing. Just talking about some of my experiences with stuff that relates to law enforcement work, but also relates to my experiences in different categories, different things to do. Graduated from high school in Southampton County. Graduated from the North Carolina Justice Academy, went to Wilson Community College. Graduated from the Coastal Plains Law Enforcement Academy. Went to the Virginia State Police Academy. Graduated from the Federal Correctional Academy. Been involved in my community in Newsom. Was a softball coach there for a while. T-ball coach, pitch coach, as my kids move up. My son Andrew, which, by the way, go Indians golf team. You saw what they did today. They did a great job. They beat out a big board over here. They had a home game in Franklin today over at Cypress Cove. He's on the golf team. My daughter goes to school at Chowan. So when I retired, I had to go back to work. So I was very blessed and fortunate to get the job I had so I could take care of my family. And I've been kind of hit on that we hadn't seen you out in the community a lot. Well, unfortunately I have a family I have to take care of. And right now I'm working about 7 days, or about 6.5 days a week because we're going through some lockdown stuff. So no, I haven't been out in the community a lot, but I have been out in the community way before now. I've talked to a lot of people. There again, I tell it like it is. I don't sugarcoat it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. There is some change that needs to be made at the sheriff's department. I'm not saying it needs to be a total drastic change, but it needs to be positive change. And depending on who all you decide to put in this position is going to be huge. The way I like to present myself is you all are the CEO of the company. Everyone in here and outside of here is the CEO of this company. I'm applying for a promotion. I'm hoping that my resume sticks out beyond anybody else's so that I get the job. That's exactly the way I look at it. And I think if you look at the experience, I don't have a J.D. Powers Associates trophy saying I have proven experience. I don't say I got the most experience. I don't say I'm the most qualified. But I can tell you one thing, I can lay my resume out there amongst anybody that's standing or sitting up here at this table. Be glad to. And here it is. I've done a lot of different things in my career with the state police. But outside the state police, I was on the State Police Association for 8 years. That's where we dealt with budgets, things like that for the state police. So I've dealt the administrative side. When I retired as a sergeant in Emporia, we had the counties of Brunswick and Greenville County along with the city of Emporia. That was my last duty post. And I looked after those guys, supervised them, and it was 26 troopers and 2 civilian employees. And I'll tell you, we made positive strides over there. We boosted the morale. We were ranking high in enforcement activity, criminal activity. Of course, we got Pipeline 95, but I got into a lot of different stuff. Plus, besides that, when I was on the SWAT team, I spent 14 years on there. Some of you probably remember seeing me around here running around in camouflage. Matter of fact, the very first day, or somewhere close to the first day, Mark Turner was doing marijuana eradication with me. We picked him up at the airport in Franklin, and when he was doing his internship with the sheriff's department. So, I remember a lot of things. I have nothing personal against anybody up here. I just, I call it like it is. What I bring is compassion, honesty, integrity. I am not looking for any group. I'm not looking for your money. I don't care about your money, you need to think about who you're voting for in this, because there's a power struggle. There's a power struggle going on, all right? Two groups of money that are trying to have the most power in this county. I am not a puppet. I am not a puppet. You ain't got enough money to buy me. You may buy somebody else, but you ain't gonna buy me. And I'm not saying anybody up here or anybody in this room is trying to buy anybody. But I'm not gonna go out and play on you as people different ways to show that I'm doing something that I've never done before. I got hit for not going to the shrimp feed to meet people, do things. Well, you know what? I've been playing in the member gas in Franklin for the last 15 years because I've been invited to play golf in that tournament. And you can say, well, there you go, maybe you ain't got your priorities right. Hey, I'm gonna play in that golf tournament whether I'm your sheriff or whether I'm John Brown, because that's the way I am. I'm not gonna change me. You can put anything in front of my name from Mr., Sheriff, Sergeant, Trooper, Deputy. I'm John Brown, and that's what I'm running on. I'm running on integrity, honesty, compassion for the people, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I have so much compassion for what you all are missing, and some of you just don't quite grasp maybe, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, and I'm not throwing snowballs out there to try to knock the snowman's head off. But there are things going on that, you know, when you ride by my house and you look at my front door is closed, you don't know that my wife is kicking my butt inside, right? You have no clue. Same thing, when you ride by Main Street on Cortland, you look over there, all the cars are parked, they look neat, they're clean, the guys look good in the uniform, but the inner working sometimes is not exactly where it needs to be. So I'm not for drastic change, but I am for positive change, and I appreciate your vote November 5th.
Good evening. Appreciate you all coming out. I do find it kind of ironic in a way that we're in Fridge and 20 years ago we had to swim to get here. This is the 20th anniversary. I missed it because I was in college, but I've seen pictures, I've heard stories, and I'm glad Franklin's come back. But I'm Mark Turner. I'm from Branchville. Been in the sheriff's office for 20 years. Graduated Southampton High School. There's one of my classmates right there. Can't hide. My wife graduated with me. Me and my wife both went to Radford. I graduated criminal justice. She's a biology, chemistry, and she kept on going to OU for dental hygiene. While I was in college, I did an internship. Don mentioned it. That's when I started at Southampton County Sheriff's Office for a summer. Vernon took me on an unpaid internship. He swore me in. He gave me a pair of brown Dickies pants, brown Dickies shirt, had one patch on the sleeve and a revolver. I was sworn and I qualified with my gun, and I was accused of being a UPS man. But I fell in love with Southampton County during that summer internship. So I went back and finished college, and when I graduated, Bernie called me and he said, I just fired fire from the jail. I need your help. I had no intentions on working in the jail. I wanted to be a police man, not a jailer. But I took the job and I told him, I'll work in the jail, but I'm not going to be here long. I don't want to work in the jail. Well, he was a man of his word. I worked at the jail farm for 6 months, went to Cortland, worked in the jail for 6 months, and then he put me in the police academy. Got out of the police academy and came on the road. I worked patrol for about 3 years. Bernie told me then, I want you to work narcotics. So, out of my 20-year career, half of it was working narcotics. Now, I had a blast. I was sworn with the state police. I worked Southampton, Greensville, Brunswick, Barnesville was this town. We did a lot of work in North Carolina. I did that for a year, and that's when Bernie said, I want you to go to the DEA. So, excuse me. I got sworn in with the federal task force, went to Hampton, which was my Group 29 in Hampton. It was Norfolk's office. And I spent 4 years in Hampton, Newport News, working a whole lot of cell phone wiretaps. Being 20 years younger than the next agent, I had to do all the undercover work over there in don't talk about a lot of it, because my wife doesn't even know what I did. She wouldn't stay with it. But after that, came back to sheriff's office and I worked as a detective until Sheriff Stutz was elected. Sheriff Stutz promoted me to patrol sergeant. I still somehow managed to convince him to let me work narcotics because that was my passion. So I was a detective working narcotics, I was patrol sergeant working narcotics, and I noticed, and I spent a lot of time in the city of Franklin, I noticed the changes in Franklin. It's always been cocaine, crack, and then heroin found its way in here. And now heroin and fentanyl are here. You might not know it, we have overdoses. People do die in Southampton County, in the city of Franklin. If they're not dying here, they're our residents. They're going somewhere else to buy it, they're dying somewhere else. People are dying from drugs. The drug world has changed drastically. And Mr. Kitchen can tell you, because he worked drugs for a long time, we used to put on a glove, we used to test it. We don't do that anymore. I can take a fingernail's worth of this fentanyl. If it was airborne in this room, every one of us is dead. Cops have to have a biology degree almost now to work drugs. While I was working drugs, methamphetamine found its way into Southampton County. One man learned how to cook, one man taught a whole bunch of people. I hit meth labs, 4 of them all together over a 2 or 3 year period. I hope I never see another one because that ties up at least 2 days, 4 or 5 fire trucks, ambulances, and gobs of police officers just to take what's essentially a Mountain Dew bottle worth of, go to Lowe's, find everything you can with skull and crossbone, put it in a bottle, and there it is. I did go to Quantico and became certified in clandestine lab cleanup and removal. Luckily, I haven't had to put the suit on because the border's so unsecure. Meth is cheaper to buy from Mexico. It's easier to get. It's a better quantity, and it's us that are watching the buyers. It's not as prevalent as it was when it first got here, but it's still here. So as a patrol sergeant, I have a shift. I stay with my shift. I work mostly nights, mostly weekends, mostly on call. You don't see me a whole lot of nights and weekends because I'm out on the street. That is pretty much my 20 years. Now I have on here, in the back if you don't have it, it's pretty much a pledge, and traveling Southampton County, knocking on doors, asking people, hey, will you support me? One of the main questions I get, what do you think about a courthouse? Courthouse. From the beginning, I have said, I support renovation of the existing courthouse. And I say it selfishly because I love the building. I love the location being adjacent to the sheriff's office. It's a safety issue. Inmates can go through a sally port, be in a courthouse. And there's no putting them in a car and transporting them. Family knows when their son, daughter, whoever has court, when you put them in a car, you put my deputies at risk and you put a better risk for escape. If they're attached, here you go. And I like old buildings. It burns me to see a fire department burn down an old structure because I see history there. I see history in Portland. I know what the price tag is, what they're claiming it's going to be, and I can't tell you what it costs of renovation to be, but it's got to be cheaper. That's money we're going to spend, and the taxpayers are going to have to foot the bill. And it all trickles down. When the county spends money, the sheriff's going to ask to be tighten up your wallet. Where can you make cuts? That's where I'm coming across as fiscally responsible, fiscally conservative. My wife will tell you I'm a penny pincher. I don't spend money unless I have to. I try to keep her on track, but that's a different story. My second point is interagency cooperation, and I've said it before, the sheriff's office has a very poor relationship with the state police. We barely communicate with the city of Franklin, and our brothers and sisters in the fire and rescue department, we treat them like stepchildren instead of our equals. We should work together. Franklin has a new chief. I'm excited to work with Patterson. I've met him a few times. I'm hoping he comes in here, gets a good foothold. I know he's got his work cut out for him. So I'm excited there's a new chief. I'd love to sit down and talk to him when the time comes. But as I mentioned, fire, rescue, police, we have never, ever all gotten together and done any kind of group training. Nothing. If there is a critical giant incident, what have you, I don't know what the fire truck's doing. I don't know what the ambulance is doing, and neither one of those know what the police department's doing. And that's a shame. And that's something that we definitely need to work on. I can't sit here and tell you I'm a traffic guru, because I'm not. That man right there is a traffic guru. He'll write more tickets than I will in 10 careers. That's his forte. I've not been big on traffic. I see the importance. Traffic enforcement not only generates revenue, but it creates a safer highway. I don't want to be labeled as the Emporium, where it's a speed trap, but there's nothing to go out there and ride 90 miles an hour. We find wanted people. We take reckless drivers off the street. We get drunks off the street. And we're making the highway safer by being out there. And I'm not just talking about 58. We need to get our minds off 58 as the only street. People in Ivor complain speeding on Main Street. People in Capron complain about people speeding on Main Street. Every town, everywhere around here, there's somebody complaining once a week about somebody speeding. I want to create a traffic division whose sole purpose is to respond to complaints, to generate revenue. They pretty much pay for themselves. It doesn't cost extra to do. It's just a shift in the personnel we have. Now, I wanted to do increase church, school, and building security. I mentioned the courthouse, and I can't publicly tell you where I see deficiencies. It would be irresponsible to tell you that I know where the problems are, because I don't want the public to know. 1 minute. I want to work with the churches. I want to work more with the schools. We have 2 school resource officers that are middle school, high school. We have deputies that should be stopping by these elementary schools. I'd love to have 9 school resource officers, 1 for every school, but I can make deputies do. My last thing was protection of natural resources. Trash. It burns me up. It looks like a third world country sometimes. After a big rain, it washes out in the ditch. I've got a jail farm, I've got inmates, I've got weekenders, I got work release. Instead of sitting around watching TV, get out there and pick up trash. Oh, I think that's my thing. Thank you.
Guys, thanks for coming out tonight. I do want to reiterate what Mark said. It is kind of fitting that we are here in Threads, that 20 years ago, this town was devastated by a flood. Unlike Mark, I was here 20 years ago. I was walking the streets of Franklin, this street right after the flood. I was living up here on North High Street, and I thought, someone said you better move your car because where I was living at had a bunch of pine trees, and you don't want a tree to fall in your car, so I moved it to Main Street. Needless to say, the next day when they called me to come to work, all I could see was the tip of the antenna from the car sticking up above the floodwaters. So, back 20 years ago, they told us that this town would never survive, and that we would never come back from that flood. And I also want to touch that they were wrong, and that was never more evident than the outpouring of the love and support that I saw this past weekend for the Lee family. And so I want to publicly offer my condolences to them. And I also was shocked today to hear that a good friend of mine, Teresa Henderson, passed away, Teresa Beltrami. And so again, that young man and that outstanding woman were prime examples of what makes this an outstanding community to live in. I say this in an outstanding community because I moved here at the age of 11 years old. My family was transferred here, and this has really been the only place that I've ever called home since we moved here in 1981. I attended Southampton County Schools, I attended Franklin Schools. Beginning of my senior year, my stepfather got another job transfer. It was time for us to leave again, and so we left. Spent some time away, and as soon as I could come back, I got old enough to decide where I was going to go and what I was going to do. I decided to come back to Franklin. And so I came back to Franklin and eventually found my way volunteering with Franklin Fire and Rescue, where I spent a number of years volunteer there, was awarded the Garland Duck Award for outstanding volunteerism with the department. And then in last part of 1996, was thinking about applying to the fire department, and I took the test, and they told me I just kept scoring 2 points too low to be a fireman, so you might want to be a police officer. Fireman and police officer in the room understand that's a little joke there. But no, I just had an issue with, I love the emergency medicine part of things. I didn't really care for much for the fire side of things, and someone said, you ought to try the police department. You'd be good at that. You have the right personality. You have patience, so you have to give it a try. And so in 1997, I was hired by the Franklin Police Department. I spent about nine and a half years in Franklin, and I decided to leave. I was one of many officers that left the department. And I found my way to New Orleans, working on a contract with Blackwater USA in conjunction with the Federal Protective Service. And while in New Orleans, I spent about a year, first in Baton Rouge and then the greater part of New Orleans. I managed about 120 to 125 Type A personalities, guards from all over the United States that came to Blackwater that were there for the Hurricane Katrina Recovery Project. And we managed about 12 to 15 government contracts and commercial contracts on behalf of the Federal Protective Service and several large corporations. At the end of that time, I came back. I went to work with the Isle of Wight Sheriff's Office. I was there for a short period of time, and when the opportunity came to go back into contracting work, and this time, instead of, I thought New Orleans was a long way away, and I thought the bayous of Louisiana were very different. Try going to Afghanistan, because that was a long way away from Main Street in Franklin or the bayous of Louisiana. So I spent 17 months in Louisiana under contract with the U.S. State Department's International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Bureau. I was a part of a 5 to 6 man mentoring team that we traveled all over the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, mentoring the Afghan border police and carrying out specific missions that were given to us by the U.S. State Department. During my time there, I was hurt in a vehicle accident and ended up coming home and having to have some surgery and going through a number of months of rehab. And when all that was over with, Sheriff Phelps called me back in Isle of Wight and said, I heard you're on the men's. Hey, what are your prospects for a job? What do you want to do with your future? And so a couple of conversations with him led me to go back to the Isle of Wight Sheriff's Office. I've been there ever since. And part of my initial things for the Sheriff's Office there was to develop some policies for the Sheriff, some policies on how to properly handle and their evidence, and to track that evidence through the court process along with other policies and procedures for them. I spent some time working in the courts for the Sheriff's Office and civil process. And so while it's not been the Southampton Sheriff's Office, it's been the Isle of Wight Sheriff's Office, I've pretty much held every position within the Sheriff's Office, whether it's been courts or civil process. I worked midnights, patrol for a while with the Sheriff's Office. And then I was assigned to the investigative unit, where I've been ever since. When Sheriff Phelps lost the election and Sheriff Marshall came in, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant. I held that rank for a number of years, and then upon the retirement of Captain Gaddis, I was promoted up to the investigations lieutenant, and that's currently the position I hold today. I lead a group of 5 highly motivated investigators who make me proud of the work that they do every single day. I tell them every day, you guys make me look good. So I've also been on the SRT and SWAT team. I've been a team leader with them. I also am our office's coordinator or liaison, law enforcement liaison to the Department of Emergency Services or Department of Emergency Management. So what that means is at the time of crisis, when the Isle of Wight County Emergency Operations Center is activated, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a major snowstorm, whether it's any other man-made or natural disaster, when that Emergency Operations Center is operated, there are key personnel who are assigned to that room, whether they be department heads or other leaders within different divisions, and we work with our emergency manager and the chief of emergency services to coordinate emergency response with the county. I'm proud of the job that I've done there in that office and working in that room for the last about the last 3.5 years. I am also sit on the local crime line board for the Isle of Wight Smithfield Windsor Crime Line. I also sit on the Greater Hampton Roads Crime Line. I'm one of the law enforcement coordinators. This past year, I had the honor to be elected as the president of the Virginia Crime Solvers Association, which means I travel all throughout the Commonwealth representing crime line and crime solver programs and promoting that partnership between citizens and law enforcement. Locally, I'm a proud member of the Nuisance Ruleton Club. This past year, I was asked to sit on the Southampton County Board of Equalization, which I did that, and I currently have been asked, and I do sit on the Citizens Transportation Advisory Council. I'm married with 3 kids. My oldest daughter and her husband just moved across the border out of state to the big city of Como. And my son is a junior rising senior at Old Dominion, and my daughter is a junior at Southampton High School. You know, guys, this is our home. I've been a part of the same church here for 35 years. This is the only place that I call home. This place, that Southampton County and the city of Franklin, has a special meaning for me And what we want to do is bring a fresh approach and a new leadership and a fresh way of thinking to law enforcement in our community. From day one, I announced my candidacy for this office in February of this year. We have ran on 3 very basic tenets, and that is, I think law enforcement needs to be accountable, law enforcement needs to be focused, and law enforcement needs to be engaged with the people that they have the honor and privilege of serving every day. So let's talk about accountable. You know, Mark talks about fiscal responsibility, and I applaud him for that. And I've looked at the budget, and I've studied the budget, and I think that the current sheriff's office does a good job with the dwindling resources that they have to use. You're talking about 75 to 80 employees there, and you're trying to make that dollar, you're trying to make it last. But what I want to do is to take that budget from being a 9-page document, and I did it this week, I worked on it, and take it down to about 1.5 pages. There's no reason that we have multiple of the same categories spread over many different departments when you can combine them. That way you, the taxpayers, can go look at the budget and see where your money's being spent. That you don't have to shuffle through 8 or 9 different pieces of paper to see how much are they spending on uniforms, how much are we spending on equipment. Let's put it on one very easy to read document so that we can be accountable to you. It's your money. It's my money. I want to go through the accreditation process, and we've talked about that, and watch our videos that we filmed on that. I want to be focused on the men and women who wear the badge every day. I want to be focused on what the mission of the sheriff's office is, and that is to meet the needs of every single community in this county. I'm proud to say that over the past several months, we've held town halls in every single community to go in and to listen to what people have to say. And lastly, I want to be engaged, and that means getting into our schools with our program, every school, every student, every day. I want to be an advocate for our communities. I want to be an advocate for our seniors. Let's do things like a Seniors and Law Enforcement Together Council. Let's put together a triad council where we bring our seniors in and we talk to them about things to keep them from being a victim of a crime. We need to get in and we need to build. That's how we build partnerships. That's how we build relationships, is getting in and being accountable, focused, engaged. Thank you.
Bathrooms are right behind this wall right here. Anybody needs a facility, we'll take about a 5-minute break, and then we're gonna come back with a question and answer. David Ray was gracious enough to let us use upstairs. We thought we were gonna be downstairs, but kind of changed the plan. Hopefully, you can call anybody coming up those steps. You need anything, see me. We got iced tea over here, sweet and unsweet. You want something to drink?
Finish.
No, just let it, because you don't want to have any hiccups.
A bunch of plugged in.
Touch the screen and see if you get the pause icon. Yep. I'm out now. Okay.
That ain't me.
We are in a 5-minute recess.
Sometimes it's mostly in the morning. Yeah, I noticed I can't honestly that's not how I can't yes, I know. Yeah, that was good. Just as good. I drove. I drove. She can leave her car and pick it up I know. Heard that. We're showing up with a lot of hey! Hello!
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. John?
They can. known of.
I'm gonna call you John because I've known you for.
Thank you very much, Mark. You saved my wife one night when she wouldn't answer the door.
You're right, you're right.
That was before we were married.
Yeah, well, actually, I saved her life. A lot has been said lately about a bachelor's degree being instrumental in being a sheriff. I'm gonna ask all four. Do you feel that a bachelor's degree makes you better suited for a sheriff? And do you feel like holding a degree is more important than people skills, executive leadership schools, or international policing? Take it away, Joe.
Now, I believe it's up to the person himself. You know, you don't have to have a degree to be able to talk to people and deal with people. You gotta have a little something up here. You gotta know when to put the mitt gloves on and talk with people. Give them a hug when they need it. And then you need to tell them, hey, let me tell you what's gonna happen right now. Okay, this is what's gonna happen. But you also gotta dial it back. But it depends on the situation. So it's all about the experience and having that quality to be able to talk to people. Do degrees help? Sure, degrees help. I mean, I know a lot of educated, and I'm not picking on any engineer that's in here. All right, if there's one in here. But I know engineers that couldn't, as they say, when you got the stuff in the boot, you turn it upside down, look on the heel, they couldn't pour it out. I've seen that. So, you know, education, sure, everybody needs education. I wouldn't be sending my daughter to Chowan if she wouldn't, you know, needed something. But no, do you have to have a piece of paper on the wall? And the thing about it, doesn't make any difference what the name is, right? It's all the same. When you fill out an application, yeah, some require this, some require that. It's more requirement now because employers are putting it out there than when I came along. You know, if you were lucky to have a GED, a high school diploma, you were getting a lot done when you were coming through when I did, especially in a community like I lived in, kind of similar to, you know, Northampton County is not much different than Southampton County. But, you know, bachelor's degree, associate's degree, which I do currently have, sure. Education is great, but to do a job, it depends on the person. Thank you.
Well, I believe that associates, bachelor. In high school, I knew I wanted to be a cop. After I couldn't join the military, that was where my passion went. I wanted to be a cop. So, obviously, I wanted to go to college. So I went to college with the sole intention of getting a criminal justice degree, thinking that's going to help me become a cop. I don't regret one moment of it because a degree essentially means you can finish what you started. You started it, finished it. I could have a degree in liberal arts, and that wouldn't be applicable to being a sheriff. I chose a degree in criminal justice because that was the selected field I wanted to go in. I knew starting at the sheriff's office, I wanted to be the sheriff. Within the first couple months, I decided, I've started at the bottom, I'm gonna go to the top. So I think a degree is important. It's more than anything, like I said, to show I can finish what I started. Is it necessarily, well, like code, you don't need it. Matter of fact, you don't even have to be law enforcement. You can hire Joe the bricklayer and he can run for sheriff and he can win. So it's not necessary to be a police officer. It's not necessary to be a sheriff. I think it's a helpful thing because the stuff I learned back 21 years ago in college, I still use. And a lot of it isn't just criminal justice. It's all the general education, that, especially the writing part. Because I've told everybody, you wear a gun, but the most important thing on you is this right here. If you can't use an ink pen, then you're really worthless. And college teaches you how to use an ink pen. So, thank you.
I think we'll make it about plain and simple as it comes. Yes, education is important. I have to agree with that. I don't want a bachelor's degree to know that I have to protect and serve the citizens which have elected me to serve in this office. I feel that with that, you need to be a person that, first of all, know how to talk when you get yourself in a corner. And I don't think you need a bachelor's degree to learn that if you are outnumbered, your mouth is what's gonna get you out of this trouble. So if you need a bachelor's degree to do that, then that's what we need. But again, I agree. A bachelor's degree is good, but on the
do think that education is very important. I have an associate's degree. I got mine late in life because to me, my first priority was for my children to get their education, and we pushed them to do that. Proud to say that my two oldest ones were at Old Dominion, and again, Emma's starting now at a junior in high school, looking at colleges and where she wants to go. And so, yes, education is important, but it's also important the other things that you bring to the table, and that's your leadership skills, that's your ability to communicate, that is your ability to inspire and motivate other people. Listen, leaders don't have to do it all, but leaders have to make a way to inspire other people to do. And so those are the qualifications that you need to look in for a sheriff. And I agree with Mark, you know, you can carry a badge and a gun, but as an investigator, I assault my keyboard every day, and I kick myself for not taking typing lessons or keyboarding back when I was in school. And so that ink pen or that typewriter is the most important piece of equipment we have. And so I do think that having a foundation, whatever you choose to be, whether it's an associate's degree or bachelor's, I mean, look around us today. Our community college is expanding its career programs. We're finding out that because for so many years we put an emphasis on a 4-year degree, that we're short a lot of people in vital trades today. And so we are expanding those fields and those avenues. And so we need to tell our young people, whatever you want to do, whether it's a 4-year degree, whether it's a 2-year degree, or whether it's a vocational education, be passionate about what you do. And if you do, you'll make a great bricklayer, you'll make a great sheriff, you'll make a great electrician, you'll make a great doctor, but you gotta be passionate about your job.
Next question. My question is for Mr. Weiss. In the Code of Virginia, Title 15.2 through 1512.2, which relates to the political activities of employees of localities, firefighters, emergency medical services personnel, and law enforcement officers and certain other officers and employees. On Part B, it says, notwithstanding any contrary provision of law, general or special, no locality shall prohibit an employee of the locality, including firefighters, emergency medical services personnel, or law enforcement officers within its employment, or deputies, appointees, and employees of local constitutional officers as defined in 15.2 through 1600 from participating in political activities while these employees are off duty, out of uniform, and not on the premises of their employment with the locality. The other portion I would like to kind of present is that employees of locality, including firefighters, emergency medical services personnel, law enforcement officers, and other employees specified in subsection B are prohibited from basically implying the endorsement of a political party, as you did in the forum in Michigan, saying you were a Democrat, as well as the Hatch Act of 1939, as well as the Pendleton Act of 1883, which basically established that people are to be brought into office for merit, not because of political affiliation. Are you aware that it is not in compliance with the law to be at campaign functions while on duty or while in your uniform? Whereas I look at your Facebook page and I see you're in your uniform at campaign activities all the time, as well as the political affiliation saying you run as a Democrat because you've been a Democrat all your life. And if you were not aware of these laws, you've been with the force for 34 years, why weren't you aware of these laws?
To be honest with y'all, I don't even know where to start with that one right there. As far as me being in uniform at different functions, yes, I've been in uniforms in different functions, but I was not in a campaign role. I was working those activities. Anybody that's been to any of those activities, they will tell you that I was not there campaigning while I was there.
So the campaign in Houston at the Field of Ministries place, that was work, not a campaign.
the, last forum we was at. She asked a question and I answered the question.
And I guess the main portion of that question was, were you aware of these laws that you were at least seemingly to me disobeying?
That's your opinion that I was seemingly disobeying. That's just your opinion.
Asking if you were aware of them or you weren't.
Again, I told you I was not disobeying at all. I was not working. I was not campaigning. I was working.
Thank you.
Okay? Next question?
This is for all four of you, gentlemen. Please give us 2 or 3 characteristics of a leader, and of these 2 or 3, which one do you find most?
Well, the characteristics of a leader is a person that stands up and takes charge of what's going on, but is able to pass that along and not be what I call a micromanager. One of the things that I've thought about is, okay, once elected, who is going to be your second or third? What is going to be your command staff? All right? I don't want a command staff that sits there every time I say, okay, this glass of tea is half full, but I want to fill it up, and this is how we're going to fill it up. We're going to take the jug over there, and we're going to take the top off and get it quick. No, wait a minute. Maybe we don't need to do that. That's what I want. I don't want somebody going, you're rubber stamped yet. All right? I want somebody that's going to be objective to me, play devil's advocate on the decisions that we make as a command staff, and tell me, hey, wait a minute, John Brown, but think about this one, buddy, because we do that, you might spill the tea. Now, commitment, leadership, you've got to be able to talk to people and deal with people, kind of like the question that we had earlier. Leadership skills can be taught, but really it's the person. It's the person. You can go to all the leadership schools you want to go to. That don't mean you're a great leader. It's something that is a knack, and sometimes you have to just learn on the fly on how to deal with people. And I think a lot of it comes from the heart, but you also got to think with your head. You can't make decisions with your heart. If I have to fire Tracy because I don't like the way she's sweeping the floor at the house, I can't say, hey baby, I love you, you're my wife, but you know what? That job you're doing, I'm sorry, it's not cutting it, you're fired. You gotta go. You can't make decisions with your heart. You have to make them with your head. And you're gonna have to make tough decisions. If you're the sheriff, you're gonna have to make tough decisions, and you're gonna have to show what your leadership skills are.
I would say my 2 main ones is patience. She's gonna disagree, but I'm very, very patient. It's very hard to make me mad. I like to figure things out before I just jump right in willy-nilly without thinking about it. I like to use common sense when I make my decisions. My main one is listening, and she's going to disagree with that too. I want people to tell me what they're thinking. Whether or not I agree with it or not is a different ballgame. But you're not going to learn anything by talking. You learn by listening. If you're talking, you're already telling what you know. If you're listening, you're learning something new. I want to hear what people claim or think their biggest issues are, and I want to be patient enough to tell them, yes, I can help you, or no, I can't. So I hope that answers your question.
First, I believe you got to be willing to be the leader, be the one who's standing out, and the one that people look up to. Those that are under you, they look up to you. The second one is you got to be a good communicator. You have to communicate exactly what you want done, and make sure they understand what you want done. But most of all, leaders lead from the front. You can't be behind and then lead and be the person behind. You have to be the person that leads from the front.
I think there are 2 or 3 traits of a leader that really stand out to me. Is I think that first and foremost, leaders have to listen, and not just listen, but listen aggressively. I think next is that leaders have to be in a position that they communicate with a purpose and communicate with a meaning, and that means explaining the why and the how. why you want to do something and how it's going to affect you. In this case, why you want to make changes and how those changes might affect the organization or the agency. And the last one is really to begin to create a climate of trust. And which one is most important? Building that climate of trust. Because you build that climate of trust by listening aggressively, and you build that by communicating with those people around you. Okay, it's called, it's not so much transactional leadership, meaning going back and forth, but we're talking about really just transformation, encouraging ownership within the agency. Those things are important qualities of a leader.
Good question. You two gentlemen first, because this was all your department. The past 12 years, Franklin Police Department, Southampton County Sheriff's Office has been like two separate islands with a lot of water in between you guys. I'm bring your attention to 2014. Had a break-in on Main Street here in Franklin. Dan Crumple's office in Delivery Point. It was investigated partially by the Franklin Police Department as a break-in. Came through the ceiling, and Mr. Crumple was afraid that somebody was going to come back the following night because he discovered it on the weekend. During that time, there was some controversy between Southampton Sheriff's Office and the Franklin Police Department that I think Southampton was calling and asked could they provide security since Franklin said they weren't going to sit somebody in the building and watch the building all night. I think you took part in that, and I think you had made arrangements to get somebody over here to work. But then you were called off because this island over here wanted to be in charge. What are you two candidates going to do as sheriff to bring these two islands together and make one whole police department and work together where there is no controversy over here, no controversy over Southampton, where everybody knows everybody and works together? You two gentlemen first, and then Mr. Potter and Brian.
First of all, situation you talk about, those that are in charge, I was in charge.
As far as bringing the agencies together, Chief Steve Patterson and I were both FBI National Academy graduates. We both are on the same board together in Richmond. I'm looking forward to working with Chief Patterson. Again, I'm in the community, and I'm hearing things, and which I'm planning on sharing these things with Chief Patterson. And I feel that, because we're on the board together, and we go to meetings together at least once a month, I feel that he and I have already started that rapport on working together. And if I'm elected the next sheriff of Southampton County City.
There's been a fundamental breakdown between Franklin and Southampton. When you were working there and when I first started, and I never have understood why, but it seems like figurehead couldn't get together, but worker bees all communicated all the time. If I ever needed something in Franklin to this day, I can call 6 or 7 guys who answer the phone like that. But it always seems that the chiefs and the sheriffs and the rank and file could never get on the same page. That's always been a problem for me. Working in the city, as much as I did, I never even told the city I was here, and I was told not to. I didn't ask questions why, because it was controversial. I come in the city, and the whole time it bothered me because if they're doing an operation and I'm doing an operation, you don't want cop on cop, and that wasn't always an issue. But I took it upon myself. This is when Frank and Mike were working narcotics. I'd call Frank or Mike and I'd tell him. My point being, I can't hear Franklin on the radio. Franklin can probably hear us. I'm not sure how the system works, but we got guys in the city all the time serving papers, serving warrants, and we could be a block away from an incident happening and we don't know about it. And that is a problem. And that is a problem that I think we can address easily fix. If something's happening in Southampton and Franklin, and both of us need to get together. There's not a wall, there's not a moat, there's not water separating. I know metaphorically there is, but it's not physically, and it never has made sense to me, and it seems like a very easy fix. Somebody needs to sit down and hash it out, get on the same page. And I think I can do that with Chief Patterson.
So I think first and foremost, we got to put egos aside. I think, let's be honest, that's been the problem over the last several years. It's been an ego problem. We've got to put those aside. You know, I shared in the debate, the forum in Boykins, the little sandbox analogy. We've got to learn to play together. We've got to learn to work together. Because at the end of the day, it's your lives and it's your property that's at stake if we're not working together. And I do think it's a problem that we have an agency that within the police department and the sheriff's office that they can't communicate. I often say that, you know, if there could be a deputy sitting at the peanut butter plant on 671 and the Kangaroo or the BP station get robbed and the person can go driving right by them, they never would know until Franklin gets the information. They have to pick up the phone. They have to call Southampton. Southampton has to relate to their deputies, and they can have someone sitting right there. The same way, there could be a deputy up on a traffic stop, and he pulls a car over, and it's a felony subject in that car, and he'd like to have some backup at 2 o'clock in the morning, and Franklin officers have no way of knowing without there being some type of time lapse before that information is relayed. So we've got to come up with systems where we're working together. We've got to put our egos to the side, because at the end of the day, it's your life, it's my wife, it's my children, it's their lives that are at stake. We've all got to get along. And you know what? I am separated by water over there in Isle of Wight, and we have the same problem. One of the things that our sheriff does is he deputizes the police chiefs in Smithfield. The Franklin police chief is an Isle of Wight deputy. He's deputized, so that if there's a situation in Camptown and our deputies are in Windsor and they can't get there, Franklin officers go and they contain the situation until we get there, and then they leave and turn it over to us. So if our deputies need backup, they go and back us up. We need to do the same thing here. We need to build positive relationships with not only the Franklin Police Department, but Isle of Wight Sheriff's Office, Sussex County Sheriff's Office, the Virginia State Police, so that we can pull our resources and make a cultural shift in how law enforcement is handled in this community.
Well, we're right back to where I started. Power struggle. Power struggle. This is my piece of land. Don't bring your butt over here. This is mine. Don't bring your butt over here. If I need you, I'll call you. But who do I call? You're gonna call somebody else. All right? Look, I know that when I was a trooper here and I was on the TAC team. We never went to Franklin maybe once or twice. They always called Portsmouth PD or Isle of Wight or somebody way out in the eastern part, because it's a power struggle. All right? That's where we are. It's all about maybe the ego a little bit with certain people. It's a power struggle. Control. When you're in power, you got control. You handle the puppets. You pull the strings. We work them like we want to work them. All right? I've got a say in this. All right? So that's the problem. I worked with Chief Patterson when I was on this TAC team. He was a detective in Suffolk. We did a lot of work together, served a lot of warrants with him. He's an outstanding gentleman. I'm glad to see him. And the citizens of Franklin made an excellent choice in choosing him to be the chief of police. He is going to make a huge difference. You're going to see it. You're going to be the flowers of what he sows. I can promise you. But we got to get away from that. You got to bring somebody in here that's able to sit down at the table, able to listen, communicate, educate, and we can move this thing along without having these ego problems and these power struggles. And look, it's small town politics right here in Franklin, Southampton County. Y'all can believe it if you want to or you don't want to, but it is, it always has been, and it probably will always be in some shape, form, or fashion.
Question back in the back.
I got a question.
All right, I've been in the Southampton County fire rescue business for 26 years. I was served on communication sheriff for 10 years. Started on Sheriff Francis and Sheriff Dutton. Fire and rescue, we write a policy on, what we should be dispatched on, what we want to be dispatched on. Each sheriff signs off on it.
not all policies are perfect, not all, calls. In the last 4 or 5 years, we have had a bunch of calls being delayed. Not by the dispatch, but they are overworked. We took on, Southampton Sheriff's Office took on dispatch in the city of Franklin because Franklin was not getting the calls out fast enough and they were being transferred from Southampton to Franklin, or Franklin to Southampton. Only one candidate in here has came out saying that he wants to get everything right with the fire and EMS. The other ones might not know it. As the communication chair person, I would take complaints. We'd look over my committee would, and we would turn them over to the sheriff's office, to the administration. They've been shot down. In my hand, I have a piece of paper on the accident. It came in and said, no injuries, it was an overturned log truck. 5 minutes later, the deputy gets there. The person is trapped. 15 minutes later, the first fire truck gets on scene. It takes 33 minutes to cut them out, so you killed 48 minutes of that golden hour for that person to survive. We wrote complaints on that call and several other calls. They go to the sheriff's office, to the administrators. Josh, I'm not saying they went to you, but they went to the top 3 in charge. They refused to do anything about it. We wrote a policy asking to be dispatched on all overturned vehicles. No, we're gonna go by what information we get. They are putting people's lives at jeopardy. The citizens that come through Southampton County, in the city of Franklin, and anywhere else traveling through here, they are putting lives in jeopardy. It's time for that to be fixed. We had a call in Coleman, the propane tank behind the old hallway. That was a very big tank. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Go by behind the old hallway, look at it. And Sheriff Upson said, I like to send my deputies first. They sent a deputy for a propane leak. That tank was actively leaking. I had to call dispatch and say, will you please page fire department before you blow up half a quarter? That is unacceptable. We wrote a complaint on that. Not towards the dispatchers, but to get these policies looked at. Nothing has ever happened. So my question to you four is, what are y'all gonna do? Are y'all, if elected sheriff, are you gonna be willing to sit down with the fire rescue and say, hey, let's look at these policies, and let's, when we have issues, let's get them corrected. Let's not put people's lives in jeopardy.
So we also addressed that early on in our campaign because I've spoken with some members of different fire departments. I've spoken to some folks in the Fire and Rescue Association. That policy of delaying the dispatch of fire and rescue is going to stop January 1st of 2020. Okay, that is unacceptable. As someone who's spent a number of years in EMS, I understand the golden hour. I understand that the longer it takes to get EMS people there, then that's less time that those providers have to get someone to the hospital. So that is going to stop. So on, as it's appropriate, overturned vehicles, automobile accidents, fire and EMS are going to be dispatched at the same time that law enforcement is dispatched. That cuts down on that. As far as the fire and EMS committee, come January 1st, there will be a member of the command staff who attends that meeting. So that member of that command staff will act under my authority as a new sheriff to make those changes. He doesn't have to come to the sheriff. It's not going to have to wait to leave the fire and EMS committee to come to the sheriff's office and review. That member of the command staff will sit across from the table from you and be able to hear those concerns and address those concerns that night. Because again, we're talking life and death issues here. The other thing that we're going to do on the flip side of that is we're going to co-dispatch deputies to fire and EMS calls. So if there's an EMS call on Main Street in Newsome's, that deputy that's assigned to that sector or that zone to patrol that area, they're going to be made aware that Boykin's Rescue or whoever's responding or that Newsome zone unit is responding to that EMS call, because they might have just be leaving Meharry Elementary School and be 2 blocks away from whatever that situation is. I don't expect them to be EMTs, but I do expect them to go there to evaluate the situation and to relay that information back to dispatch so EMS knows about it. We're going to learn to start working together. Our missions are different. I've said it before, fire and EMS is to protect life and property. Law enforcement is protect and serve. But at the end of the day, our mission is the same, our goal is the same, and that is to provide you guys, the taxpayers, with the very best law enforcement and fire and EMS services out there. We're gonna train together and we're gonna work together.
Yes, I'm willing to sit down with you and we can go over these policies. I can't say for sure, definitely say tonight that, everything we go over is gonna be your way or the sheriff's way. But I am willing to sit down and we go over these different things. Now, what happened in the past, I can't say what the sheriff did and what he didn't do. I'm gonna say to you that I'm willing to sit down.
I've spoken to just about every fire department in Southampton County, and I never knew that the complaints were coming into the sheriff's office. And we got the luxury tonight, we got the fire department's guy, and we got a dispatcher here, and it's not the dispatcher's fault. Dispatch is doing what they are instructed to do. Now, I'm one of the old school mentalities that you never have enough help. I'd rather turn 5 trucks around than not dispatch them. I'd rather get there and find, oh, there's nothing to it, go back to the station. But if there's something going on where there's even a remote possibility that there could be further, car upside down, could be a fuel leak. Car hit a light pole, could be a line down. Every accident has a possibility of an injury. And sometimes we get there and then we find out. But why aren't you dispatched first? Because deputies are already out riding around. You guys are sitting at home, have to respond from home to the station, from the station to the scene. We're gonna get there faster most of the time. So you should be dispatched first. And that, I have no problem with sending out your whole squad to every call. You're gonna get tired of it, maybe, because we're getting paid to be out there and you're volunteering your time, 4 o'clock in the morning. We turn you around, just know, I want you there, because you never know when we don't need you. Thank you.
Yeah, I personally will be at those meetings because I'm part of that. I'm in the Houston Volunteer Fire Department, have been since 1995. I've been to one of the association meetings this year. When I was with the fire department, I was president for 9 years, and we did what we did there, and the fire department in Houston has come a long way. Think about the Code of Virginia. It's the law. The fire chief is in control of the scene. It's the law. It's the way it's written. So you got to know where you got to play ball at. All right? And if it don't calls for a criminal investigation or something that has broke the law, then the fire chief is pretty much in charge. He is the guy. You can't go there and tell that fire chief he needs to move his fire truck. Tried it one time. Didn't work out so well. All right? So we got to follow the law. We have to do away with the system that's in place. It's not going to work. I said it in Boydton. I said it in Boydton. I understand what it's like to need something and not have it. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And like I said, that's something that has to be addressed. We have to sit down at the table. We have to get together, set those egos aside, and I think January 1, 2020, as they say, I think you're gonna have hopefully no big egos. We're gonna set it aside and we're gonna get done what needs to be done to move Southampton County forward, move our communities upward, inspire, communicate. We're gonna move in ways that is gonna be very pleasing, positive, very, very positive.
Yep, I got one right here. All right, I got a question that goes for all 4 of you. So if elected as sheriff, what immediate personnel changes will you make?
Great question. Like I said earlier, I don't know who my top people will be yet. All right, I'm still gathering. I got some ideas, But what I'm gonna do, like I said in Boyd, is I'm gonna put a team together between that November 6th date and January 1st date. This team of 3 people I've already chosen that are very common sense, book sense, outstanding people within the community. All 3 have different backgrounds. They're going to interview every person at that sheriff's office. I'm going to find out what their skills, what their knowledge is, and what their ability that they want to do. Because if you got people that want to work drugs, but they're stuck being the dog catcher, guess what? You put that guy working drugs, you ain't, my grandma said, if you work a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Guess what he's going to do for you? He's going to perform. He is going to be a performer. You're going to motivate him. He's going to outstand, okay? So we got to find out. We don't need drastic change. Here's the thing about it. I said this in Boykin. Deputy sheriffs should not worry about their job every 4 years. That sheriff better worry about his. Deputy sheriff is sending his kids to school, putting food on the table for his family, should not have to worry about whether he's got a job or not. Now, are we going to move some people? Yeah. We're going to get rid of some people? I don't foresee actually getting rid of people, but, you know, there are things where you can put people, and a lot of times they don't like being where they are. They'll move along. All right? You know what I mean? I'm just being very serious here because I'm not a candy coat. But I'm not looking to take anyone's job, no. But we're going to move people where they need to be.
You've asked the question that every deputy there has asked me, and I will not tell them. Because from day one, I told them, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down, whatever happens in January, you'll be fine. If you come out and support me, there could be retribution. If you come out and support him and he loses, there could be retribution. I've warned them, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down. And I'm worried about me, and I have plans, but I won't tell the guys because I want them to vote for me for the right reason, not before what I can do for them in the long run. And that's been my stance since day one.
Mark and I are really basically in the same situation. I won't come out and say what I will do or will not do with the deputies there. There again, the guys at all, they are afraid that, you know, if Mark gets it, and, you know, then Mark's gonna get rid of some people if they come out and really stand out and say, I support Mark. Versus, I mean, they stand out and say they support me. They're afraid. So therefore, a lot of them are just keeping quiet and keeping their head down, which to me is a smart thing to do, because at the end of the day, November the 5th, we don't know who the sheriff's gonna be. Each one of these candidates up there hopes that it be them. Okay? So, again, I'm in the same situation we are in. Like I say, I will not divulge what my plans could be.
So I said many months ago, let me back up. Of all these people up here, I'm the only person that has gone through the change of a sheriff. When Sheriff Phelps lost the election and Sheriff Marshall came in, 12 people got letters that said your service is no longer needed. And I think that was very unfair to those 12 people, but Sheriff Marshall had his reasons for doing the ways that he was doing. He did. I have said from day one that if you are employed at the sheriff's office the day of the election, you will continue to be employed there 100% the day after, and the day after, and the day after. Now, that's not saying that you're not going to know what my expectations are, what my administration's expectations are, and every deputy there is going to be given the tools and the training and the resources to meet those expectations. And I look forward to the long-lasting working relationship. But I came out months ago and said that publicly. I put it on video. Hold me accountable to that. Let me tell you something else. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. Stand up, Antonio. If I'm elected, this will be your new chief deputy. Antonio Wilson. He has over 30 years of law enforcement experience between the city of Suffolk, between Virginia Beach Police Department, and he recently retired from the Isle of Wight Sheriff's Office, and now he's a senior investigator with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office in Suffolk. I'm talking about bringing different change, a fresh perspective to this office. I asked him, he and I, the only person that's despite the rumors that are going around that I'm gonna bring in deputies from Isle of Wight, wherever else, that is the only person that I've had conversation with about a position, because I know that man's heart, I know that man's drive, I know his education, and I trust him explicitly. So that is what the changes that I'll make.
As a taxpaying citizen and a former EMS provider of Southampton County, my concern is about the drug problem in Southampton and Franklin communities, especially what happened most recently in Southampton High School. What would you do to find activities for adolescent adults to keep them off the streets? Not everyone has access to hunting and fishing or fire and EMS volunteer. Not everyone wants to. So what would you do for these kids who are older who really need some guidance at that particular ages? Our parks aren't even really efficient for the safety of the kids. Starting with whoever wants to start.
First of all, my kids are lawyers, doctors, lawyers. They are our future. They're the ones that we're gonna have to look to take care of us when we are older. I agree, we need to start to find things for our kids to do. I feel that we need to try to find some center, or open up a center for them. I don't know where we're gonna get the money from, but I mean, at least we can put it on the table to try to open up a center in Southampton County where the kids will go, have somewhere to go on Saturday. Or even talk to the school administration. Years ago, I remember when the school did open up on Saturday. Every Saturday that school was open, the kids had somewhere to go. For some reason or another, I mean, that school is no longer open. I mean, I remember when they went in and played basketball on Saturday, played volleyball. Giving them something to do. I mean, rather than sit around and play games on their phone all the time. I feel that kids have to have something to do because the idle mind is a devil's workshop. And I mean, if we got somewhere for these kids to go and do, I feel that they'll kind of stay away from the drugs. I really do feel that.
So it goes back to our points of being accountable, focused, and engaged. And as law enforcement, we've got to get engaged with our young people. It goes back to our program talking about every school, every student, every day. We've got to get in. We've got to interact with those kids. We've got to build up partnerships and relationships with those kids. And that happens on a one-on-one level. And I agree with you. I've raised 3 kids in this community. My 3 kids, they didn't hunt. They weren't into. My oldest son did play for Newsom's play baseball. My daughters didn't. My youngest one is into horses. But we've got to find what interests them and their level, and then as law enforcement, we've got to build up that relationship to encourage them, whatever it may be. Now, November 5th, you're voting for the sheriff, but you're also voting for every member of the Board of Supervisors, okay? And so this county needs to step up and start allocating more money to our young people. They gave $15,000 or $30-some thousand to the country club last year. They had a big argument. They only gave $15,000 this past year, and they set aside $15,000 for other programs. That's pitiful. That's a drop in the bucket for the money that's needed to support our young people. And so, yeah, take the sheriff's election seriously, but take the Board of Supervisors election equally seriously, because they're the ones that allocate the money. All we can do is build their one-on-one relationships.
Tommy is absolutely right. It is all about money. As far as I know, there's no money budgeted to the sheriff's office. Now, I've got Keith Rhodes sitting back there being real quiet, one of our school resource officers. He's at the high school. I got one at the middle school. I've heard a lot of interest in starting a program in the school, an Explorer program, introducing the kids at an early age, middle school, high school, to a club and exposing them to the law enforcement lifestyle. That's just a start. That's something that we can do that's not going to cost any money. You know, begging Southampton County to give us money is going to be hard and pulling teeth. Like I said, in the future on the horizon, there's this big black cloud looming called the courthouse. And we're going to be told, cut, 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 cut. But look how big Southampton County is. To have parents engaged to get them to the gonna pay buses to run on weeknights or Saturdays and Sundays to get them to a central location. So, I would love to host something. I would love to just to start with an Explorer program to see if there's interest in it. And I think it will take off. And that's a good recruitment tool for us down the road too. But that's just step one. That doesn't cost any money. And that's all I got. That's all we have right now.
Yeah, so we gotta use our school resource officer, exactly where I was going, school resource officer. All right, now guess what, new law passed, we can hire retired police officers, law enforcement officers, to work I think it's like a 28, 29-hour week at, our school at our schools. And you don't have to pay any benefits, anything, but those resource officers have got to get with the young people, get them energetic about what that school resource officer is actually there for. He's not only there to keep them safe, but he's got to go out there and do some of those Facebook things, you know? You got to have that resource officer willing to do that little boogie dance or whatever with these kids, to let them understand that they feel that he is, hey, he's one of me, but he's here to keep me safe. You got to have that momentum. You got to have that drive. You got to have that leadership with that person, where he can talk to these young kids and explain to them. So if they got a problem, they can go to someone like Mr. Rose and say, Mr. Rose, you know, I'm having a problem at home. I don't really know what to do about it. You know, he can give them guidance, and he can point them in a way of where to go to help him or her get some help in what they're asking for. So the school resource officers are huge. The law passed last year. I think it's going to be a great thing. I think you'll see more school resource officers in the future.
I've got one. May I make one comment? I don't think these gentlemen really understand the funding for a school resource officer. That's not real clear, and I'm not sure the audience does. School resource officers are paid half out of the sheriff's department budget and half out of the school board budget. And I'm on the school board, so I know exactly what I'm talking about there. And that needs to be clarified. So you can't just say put a school resource officer somewhere. I know I'm right. That's why I stood up.
But we got two of them, right?
We have
paying
two
for
in
two now, right?
Southampton County.
Okay.
Yes, we do. We also have school security officers that are paid out of a grant that doesn't come at all from school or sheriff's department funds, and they do not carry weapons. And as far as putting people in the schools, police officers walking around with guns, we don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want to frighten our children. We don't want police officers walking around the school all the time carrying weapons.
But somebody else can get in there with a weapon, and then he's gonna be without
Let me.
Thank you. I will be glad to talk with you about that.
It's not a question, but Dr. Modlin, it goes back to, it goes back to building relationships.
She's so angry. I will be glad to phrase that as a question for you, and I will be glad to discuss that with her ad nauseum, at length.
I agree with you, and there are some concerns about having officers in schools with firearms or weapons. I totally understand that, but it's about protecting our children. It's about building relationships to where they don't see officers as a bad guy. I can give you a prime example. I have an officer that works for our department that right now in Carsville Elementary School.
You shared that with me.
Yes, ma'am.
But we also want teachers to be able to teach.
I agree.
And they can't teach if there are constant interruptions and people walking in and out of the classroom and in and out of the
They
school.
wouldn't be in and out of the classroom always.
I've been very vocal about putting out a plan called Every School, Every Student, Every Day. Okay? And Dr. Modlin and I have had some brief conversation about that to kind of clarify some things. So my plan is deputies getting out of their cars, walking into a school, having conversations with the principal, and I'm not saying disrupt the classroom, but I'm saying walk the hallways for 5 or 10 minutes. Sit out in the parking lot and do a report. Go in at lunchtime if it's okay with the principal. If you make contact with that school administrator and they say, we're testing today, or we have this to do, or we have this, then our deputies want to be respectful of the educational confines of that school. That's what our kids are there, is to be educated. But I also want them to be safe. And if it means the deputy walking through the school hallways, or being there when the buses get there in the morning and standing on the sidewalk and saying, hey, how are you doing? Encouraging them, or being there when they leave in the afternoon as a parent, that's what I want my kids to do. But
That's very
so-
different than having them walk into the classroom.
Last question right here.
All right, the question two, Simon Father, sir. I'm trying to speak two questions. How long have you been with the Alawite County Sheriff Department, and and why didn't you run for sheriff in Alawite? And now with Josh and Turner, is this election bringing division within the sheriff department? Then why is that so? You guys work together, should have some kind of rapport together. So why would this election bring the animosity within that division within the sheriff department?
As I stated earlier, I've been with the Alawite Sheriff's Office now almost 11 years now. Why I didn't run for Alawite is quite simply I don't live in Alawite County. And the code says that in order to run for a constitutional office, you have to live and reside in the jurisdiction where you plan to live. I've lived in Southampton County for almost 35 years now. I currently live in the Sunbeam area, and I make the drive to Alawite County, so that's the reason why I didn't run over there.
As in reference to a division between Sergeant Turner and myself, I don't see that as a division.
So you don't see it?
I don't see it. When I chose to run for sheriff, Sergeant Turner, myself, and John over here, we're all in the same fraternal order police lodge. I'm the president of that lodge. Our director came to us, each one of us, and told us that they were not going to support each one of us being we all in that lodge together. I got up and I talked to John and I talked to Mark as well. And I told them this, we're all running for the same position. You were friends of mine 19 or 20 years ago. What I know about you is gonna go with me when I go to my grave. I'm not one to get up and bash these guys. These guys got families.
That's right.
I have to look after these guys' families. I'm not gonna be the one to get up there and say what John did 20 years ago, what Mark did 20 years ago.
That's right.
That's not what we're here for. We're here for to do what's best interest to protect and serve the citizens of Southampton County and the city of Franklin. They don't want to hear about what John did or what Mark did. They want to know what we're gonna do if you get elected sheriff.
That's right.
That's my primary focus.
Okay, that's right, John.
I think the division is perceived because Josh is my immediate supervisor, and it's business as usual while we're at work. Now, the deputies think that we're competitors, where I'm not competing with Josh, I'm competing with the voters. Josh is gonna run, I'm gonna run, and Tommy and Josh are all running, so when I come to work, it's to work. Campaigning is put aside. He's my supervisor, I'm gonna do what he says. It's the deputies that perceive that we are in some kind of mortal combat, and that we can't get along because they want drama where there is none, and that's just human nature, I think. And to answer your question,
There's no division within the rule due to this election.
I don't see it. Everybody comes to work to do a job, and what they say off duty is different. Everybody comes to work to do a job.
All right, guys, it's 8:08. I have got one comment. No need to answer the question. You say we got dispatchers again, we got EMS again. My only comment is that when fire and rescue call for a deputy, they might be getting their butt handed to them, and dispatch doesn't know that. I say, if there's an issue, well, a deputy's needed on a EMS call, they need to send it, no questions asked. And I don't know whether that's a dispatcher's call to find out why the deputy's needed or not. But if they need you, they need you, irregardless.
And I do have a problem with any deputy asking why when he's asked to see his call, no matter whether it's a fire department or wherever. Your job is not to ask why, your job is to go to that call. And that's your number one job. Because at the end of the day, I wanna make sure that every deputy there that left home that morning, go back home and be with his wife that night. So their job is not to ask why, but to send you. I would say it like I say to Marines, the way Marines say, your job is not to ask why, your job is to do with that. That's the Marine way of saying it.
All right, guys, I think these guys will go downstairs and answer a few questions if you ask them. But I wanna thank you guys for coming out tonight. There's a whole lot more here than I expected. I appreciate it.
Hey, Sydney, I do apologize, but I do have a question that I would like to ask. And I know what Josh just said, but, you know, this what I'm getting ready to say bothers me. But my question is to this entire candidate staff. You know, there's nobody that's gonna fill out an application and do a background check or anything. There were some questions asked at the last form. I was trying to figure out where they were coming from. Didn't understand why. So I want to ask the question and to everyone here, and I'll answer it first, and I want to go down the line to each candidate. Has any of you ever been charged with a felony or a misdemeanor in the Commonwealth of Virginia? I have not. I've received one speeding ticket and one failure to yield right away when I was 18 years old. That's it. That is my question.
I ran a stop sign in Radford, but I went to driving school and it got dismissed, so I have nothing, no arrest, nothing.
You got this, Tommy Bond.
I have nothing on my record as well.
I have nothing on my record.
I did go to get my motorcycle license and found a ticket up there when I went back to get on the motorcycle. Other than that was just a parking ticket.
So I'm going to answer that question two ways. And I'm going to make myself very clear when I answer this question. Because whoever has taken upon themselves to write letters to newspapers, to contact television stations, to go on all-out attempt to smear my character and impugn my integrity, I'm going to answer that question straightforward tonight. Because I hope you've learned from me over the last 9 months, I don't have anything to hide from you. If you wanted to know this question, because somebody already knows, because you're doing everything you can behind the scenes to stir the pot, you should have come and asked me ahead of time and not waited. We talk a lot about constitutional rights in this election, but we forget about the 6th Amendment to the Constitution. So let me answer that question. I'm going to answer it two ways. First question is no, I have not. Because legally, morally, and ethically, I don't have to answer that question. Now, in the spirit of transparency, yeah, I'll tell you. In 1991, I was involved in an investigation 28 years ago. And I was charged with something. And it went to court, and that charge was dropped. And as a result of that, the judge issued an order of expungement. And if you know what an expungement means, it means it's wiped away and it's done away with, because I wasn't guilty of what I was accused of doing. It's easy to make an accusation against somebody. And to the person that took it upon themselves to investigate my background and to send copies of police reports to the Tidewater News and to the Virginia Pilot, to the Daily Press, and didn't have the gall to put their return address or sign it, but had to postmark in Jacksonville, Florida, you should have come and asked me, because I would have told you.
Right.
Because for 21 years I have stood on my integrity and the cases and what I have worked in this, in my, not a career, folks, what I think is my calling. And I will not have anybody from this point forward try to impugn my integrity. I had a man one time before tell me that, and I walked out of his building because he felt like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Because I took a stand for a young officer in the department, and that's why I left the Franklin Police Department, because I stood up, and I stood up for a young deputy, a young officer that was being treated the wrong way, and that's why I gave up my career at the Franklin Police Department. So for 21 years, so yes, John, I have.
Yeah.
I have, and a circuit court judge ordered that record sealed because if you know anything about expungement, it says when it causes a manifest injustice to the petitioner, to the person that is accused, that it needs to be wiped away. So yes, in 1993 or 1994, that was wiped away. And of all these guys on this stage, I have the most investigated background of anybody up here. I held a security clearance for 17 months in Afghanistan. I had a background check to work for Blackwater, and I've had a background check, including a polygraph, that if you would like to see it, I will sign a release and release that
Yes.
polygraph result today to work for Mark Marshall and Isle of Wight Sheriff's Office.
Stomp it in the mud.
I'm not picking on you, and I'm not boasting you, Tommy, but obviously somebody got their name. But I just want to make sure it's clear, because it's my understanding, I think when you're running for this particular office, you should be very crystal clear. This is news to me, all right?
Well, it's not news to somebody.
It's my understanding that you were charged with embezzlement, all right?
Doesn't
It's a
matter what I
felony.
was charged with.
It's a felony.
Doesn't matter what I
And
was
the
charged
charge was not dismissed, it was no
with.
profit.
No, I didn't say it was dismissed. I said the charge was dropped.
The charge was no profit. So as the sheriff, let me finish, please. If you are elected sheriff, a felony warrant does not have any statute of limitations. And I'm not picking on you, but it seems like I am. But
You
this
are.
information needs to be out into the public.
John, I don't know how much more plain I could just put it. Again, if you spend as much time
That warrant
investigating
can
my
be served at
background,
any moment.
then I tell you what, the Hampton Commonwealth Attorney served a warrant. They have it for 28 years. The order was expunged. It
The
was
order
done
can
away
be
with.
expunged off your record, sir.
John-
But a felony warrant,
John, all I can tell you,
20 and 30 years
John,
ago,
all I can tell you
it's
is
still
Getting
valid
Tommy.
today.
those people
All
that sling
profit.
mud.
All right, who wants
realize
to sling
they're covered in
mud? 'Cause y'all being
themselves, okay?
Covered
I
in
just wanna
mud.
make sure you all are clear
Well-
with the law.
Do we want to talk about your mud?
Pull your pants up either.
I'm talking about the law.
Stop.
Sling the mud in the next.
Okay, guys.
Everybody got a little dirt on their